you've got to be thinking for yourselves. So, Nigel, you're currently doing a post-MBA, MBA? Isn't that a shop? MBA. Program with your company. So in October, so you finish your program in October, and your company wanted you to continue in a slightly different role full-time, which you were grateful for. That was good news. But in order to get up to speed, they gave you 10 days notice that they wanted you to go to India for 2 months. So you were going to be flying out yesterday. Okay. So firstly, Tia, how did that make you feel? Was it a relief? Come on. I've got the notes there, so you can read these.
Okay. Despite what some people may think, it wasn't actually a relief for me. It was even less notice for me because I was away when Nigel heard, so he waited until I was back to tell me. I was upset because I was going to miss him, and also we were due to move house, so I became overwhelmed at the thought of moving on my own.
You just didn't think that would be a blessing to not have him in the way. You can put his pants really high up or something like that. Right, okay, so you seem to do a bit of a prayer tug of war where your prayers were kind of all over the place. Can you describe?
Yeah, so I prayed a similar prayer about 5 times. I prayed that God would find a way for Nigel to stay through an equally good opportunity within his company or an even better one. At the end of each prayer, I took it back and apologized to God for being ungrateful. So then I said to God, I'm grateful for the opportunity that he had at this time. And Nigel said to be grateful given the tough corporate environment, so I focused on that and began to feel peaceful.
Okay, so you had a few days left to spend together before Nigel had to go. So this was on Tuesday. While you were out, you got an unexpected message.
Yeah, so we were out in Southend spending the day together, and then we're driving back home, and I get this message on my phone on like Microsoft Teams, and this really senior guy from work messaged me, and he said, I've seen your profile from HR, do you want to have a chat? And I said to Tia, I haven't applied for any jobs, but this sounds like something to do with the job. So I call him, and he says, I have a job free in my team, do you want to chat? And he told me the job, and it was like my dream job within the company. I was super underqualified for it. I was thinking, hopefully I'll get this in 2-3 years, but because you need 5 years sales experience, I only had 1. So I was like, are you interested? Yeah, of course I'm interested. And then he said, okay, great, I'm feeling a bit ill, let's chat next week. But I said, there's a bit of an issue. I'm actually flying to India on Saturday for 2 months. But he said, okay, we can do the call virtually. So I'm like, fine. So then I go and speak to Tia. I'm like, well, good news and bad news. Good news, he's thinking of considering me for this role that I don't have the experience for. But bad news, I'm still going to India. So then we're like, okay, it's fine. Maybe the time in India will be shorter. We won't have as much time apart. But then we go home and we think, is there something more that God is asking us to do? I didn't apply for this job. I'm not qualified. And we're like, maybe there's something more we can do. And so we kind of came up with a message, and we spoke to I called this guy on Wednesday, and I said, is there any chance, I know you're ill, and I'm super grateful for the opportunity, I don't want to push it, but is there any chance you can bring the call forward this week? And he said, yeah, sure. Why don't you come down to Reading, and we'll have a chat tomorrow at 3 p.m. So I'm like, okay, amazing. But then it dawns on me, I'm like, I've only got 24 hours to prepare for an interview I'm hopelessly underqualified for. So then I'm like, okay, let me just do as much reading as I can and come up with the presentation. And then Thursday comes, and we're both a bit nervous as what does this actually mean in terms of India and flights and things. But then we both felt this peace, and I was telling Tia, I felt when Pilate is talking to Jesus and he says, I have the authority to set you free or to let you die. And Jesus is like, no. The only authority you have has been given by my Father. He's the one who decides. And I was like, why do I need to be so nervous? If God has this for me, I'll get it. It's God who decides what happens, not this person. And so I go to the interview, and it all goes really well. And he's like, I want you on the team. So I'm like, oh, amazing. But then he's like, but it's Thursday evening. I'm not sure I'll get a sign-off from my boss before Saturday. So I'm like, all right. So then I called Tia, and I'm like, well, I've got good news and bad news. Good news is I think I've got the job, but bad news, I might be still going to India in 2 days. So then to cut a longer story short, over the next 24 hours, we get sign-off, we get confirmation, and then Friday at 1 p.m., it all comes through, flights, everything's cancelled, and I actually start my new job tomorrow. We've just been in shock, really, because one, I'm super happy, or for both of us, but I'm super happy for Tia because like God just answered her prayers so directly. But like the timing was just crazy. Like on Tuesday, I didn't even know this guy. And then on Friday, he was my boss. Like just crazy, the timing, yeah.
So a dramatic week, T. What has this experience showed you about God?
I have never had God answer such a specific prayer. Nigel's able to stay and he has an even better opportunity. God cares about the big and the small. He cared about how I was feeling and he cared about Nigel in his work situation. And he can do more than we can imagine. He is our Father and he wants to provide for us and show us how he cares. But sometimes we need to take the first step in reaching out.
Nigel?
Yeah, Tia's a lot more succinct than I am. I think firstly it showed me like the importance of asking. Like Tia asked, and like in the Bible in James 4 it says, you don't receive because you don't ask. And like I wasn't asking not in terms of I think lack of faith. I just didn't think there was an other option. And like a few people know like. Yeah. It's hay fever. Yeah, like with my family stuff, like there's a lot of things I've asked for, but there's things I haven't because I've just thought, how is this ever going to happen? And it's just showed me like maybe I should ask for those things as well. But then secondly, you know, like I think when we hear testimonies like this, it's easy to think, you know, someone asked and then God delivered, but we kind of miss the middle part. And I think in this middle part is where God is saying, you know, come on, like I want you to play a part in this as well. And you know, for us it was like bringing forward the call, it was doing the prep, and like. There's so many times, I think, in the Bible where God, you know, God does something amazing, and He, through His like loving kindness as a Father, He wants us to be a part of it as well. Like in the feeding of the 5,000, like the disciples say to Him, you know, how are we going to feed all these people? And Jesus says, you feed them, and He knows they don't have enough to feed them, but He says, you know, you bring me what you have, and I can make this grow. And I was reading a couple of weeks ago in John where Jesus heals the blind man. He spits in the dirt and like puts the dirt on his eyes. And He doesn't say, you know, you're healed. He says, you know, walk to this lake or walk to this well or whatever and wash your eyes and then you'll be healed. Like the blind man who couldn't see had to walk to get what Jesus had asked him to do. And yeah, I just think, I mean, there's things all of us are struggling with, like whether it's finances or relationships or marriage or health or whatever. And like, I just think, the first thing is to ask, like Tia did. And I think the second thing is to ask God, like, what do you have for me? What part do you have for me to play in this miracle? So, yeah.
So when I'm hearing them talk, I hear that Ephesians 3:20. Now, to He who is able to do immeasurably more than we can ask or imagine. And what I like in that story is they kind of cottoned on, I think God's up to something. How do we position ourselves to work in partnership with what God's doing, even if it's beyond our wildest dreams? So, guys, thank you very much for sharing. Praise God.